morning, everybody. Welcome to Mortal Gaming. This is me again, Marvin, and we're now here for another video for Ragnarok Origin. And this time we're going to be talking about the third jobs tier list. But take note, this tier list is just for the first third jobs or first set of third jobs that are gonna come out in the LNA server. But then again, these are all based on our current meta in the global server, since we have already considered that the third jobs that are gonna get released on the third or on the LNA server will bring or will carry all of the buffs, the job balances that happened in the global server. First, take note that these are all based on my opinions, my experiences, our experiences, and my friends' experience on their jobs. And you may have different experiences. If you have different experiences, then you can comment it down below. I really do appreciate all of the additional input. I will take that. Just be respectful, because I allotted time for this tier list, and these are all based on my my experiences, since you know that I have tried almost all of the job classes on the global server. Okay, so let's first talk about the content that we're covering. We will be going through the PvE and then the PvP contents. So for PvE, we have farming or grinding, MR, that's it. We also have MVP, Nightmare Temple, Juperos, Temple, Time Space Anomaly. And then for the PvP, is it F2P Friendly, Phantom Hunt, Guild League Main, Guild League Secondary or Sub, War of Imperium, and Dimension Drill. Okay, so considering that it is not the other contents like the Glory Ladder or the Imperium Overrun is still not in the LNA server, we already have this one on our contents, because it's gonna take a long video to cover all of those. So I'll be making another one in the future. Okay, so now let's talk about the ratings. In terms of the ratings, we have the S tier as the top one. Okay, the next one there is the A tier, the next one would be B tier, the next one would be C tier, and the last one will be the D tier. There will be no E tiers, since if after all of the buffs and the adjustments and the balances, I think nobody deserves an E tier in this list. But if the first patch that got released in global, when they released the third job, is the same patch that will be released in LNA, I think there will be an E tier. But considering that it's not, then the lowest would be D tier. Now, in terms of the alt jobs, if you are one of those people who are asking, because a lot of people are asking me, what about the alt third job, alt second job, because we won't be having alternative third jobs yet. So is it wise, or is it okay to stay for the alternative second job classes? I would say that it is not ideal. Okay, so a lot of people have already tried it on global. When the third job got released, they said that they're gonna stick to their alternative jobs. But then again, after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they were forced. Okay, they were forced to transferring to the third job classes. The first reason is that a lot of the new progress or a lot of new contents that would be adding a lot of power creep and a lot of progression to the third jobs on the characters that have advanced to the third jobs. They won't be getting that. Okay, the next one would be in terms of the skill damage multiplier. It's nowhere. Okay, it's nowhere compared to third jobs. The third jobs usually have thousands and thousands of damage multipliers on their skills, as compared with the damage multipliers of the alternative jobs. It's like around 400%, 500%. You'd be lucky if you have 600% damage multiplier, and it's not spammable too. Now, in terms of the support, the Archbishop will beat all of the support in the alternative jobs. In terms of tanks, if you're gonna be a paladin or if you're already accustomed to becoming a tank on a paladin, I would still now be suggesting for you to switch to a mechanic, because the mechanic is a better tank than the paladin. Okay, so we'll be doing this one by one in terms of job classes across all of the contents. Okay, let's start with the Rune Knight. In terms of farming, the Rune Knight is really one of my favorite characters or job classes, because you know, it's just so good watching your character kill the enemies from afar using normal attacks, and it's using a melee damage. Okay, so it's still gonna be using the melee stats, melee damage stats, but you're gonna affect the enemy or damage the enemy or kill the enemy from afar. That is because of the Dragon Zion, the burst skill of the Rune Knight. That's why I love it so much, particularly when they added a job function of the sigil, wherein you get to lower down the the cooldown of your Dragon Zion and making it have a 5-second downtime only. That's why it's so good. That's why I'm gonna rank it. I'm gonna rate it tier A. Okay. Next would be the MVP. In terms of MVP, this time you're gonna use the spear build. If you're using a sword build on farming, maybe in latter parts of the game, wherein your stats are gonna be so overwhelming for your character's attack speed that you can still use a spear build for farming. But as of now, sword build is still the best one for farming. For MVP, then the Rune Knight is one of those job classes that can give out or can dish out a lot of DPS. If you don't know, the Rune Knight has a nullification on the damage or the size penalty. That's why you won't be needing a mechanic. You don't need a mechanic to, to ignore the size penalty of the enemy. You can now hit 100% across all of the sizes. That's just so good. In terms of MVP, if you're using also a spear build, and adding up the converter, you'll be dealing so much damage, because the buffs or the damage capability of the Rune Knight is, in terms of its multiplier, can go up to hundreds of millions in terms of damage. That's why I love it on MVP. In terms of burst MV or burst DPS, it's one of those best classes out there. So I'm gonna rate it as S on MVP. Next would be Nightmare Temple. In terms of Nightmare Temple, same as MVP, because you're battling bosses. You'll be wanting to take down the bosses, okay, as fast as you can. And in some cases on the Nightmare Temple bosses, you would want to finish it as soon as possible so that the mechanics won't start. And that's where Rune Knights come. Particularly the DPS classes of the third job classes is gonna make it easier for you to go higher difficulty on the Nightmare Temple. And the thing here that we would be wanting is to take down the boss as fast as you can. And Rune Knight Spear build is one of those job classes. That's why I'm ranking it as S tier. Next, for Jupe, same for Jupe, S tier also. The only downside here that I would say is that, in terms of the mobs, the Rune Knight doesn't have that much, fast capability of eliminating mobs, particularly if you're concentrating on the bosses. But if you're using the spear type, sometimes you would have trouble of killing the mobs, around you. But that doesn't mean that the Rune Knight doesn't have AoE. It has AoE. It has a lot of AoE. All you need is to, move a little bit closer to the mobs. Okay, so it's still an S for me. It's still gonna bring out a ton of points, since on Juperos it has been proven that the crit and the burst is the ones that take down the shield of the bosses, and it is also good as a very good counter or a very good option for you to get a higher rating or higher points in case you are running for the ranks on the Juperos. Okay, Next would be time-space anomaly. Of course, burst damage, you would want that on a Rune Knight, and that's why it's S for me. It's one you would always see the Rune Knights dealing more damage than other job classes that has the same DP on TSA. Okay, let's now go to the PvP side. It's here. For the PvP side, is it F2P friendly? I would say it's not that F2P friendly, since if you want to optimize your character or make an optimal use of your Rune Knight, you have to build both spear and both sword builds. So those two builds require different weapons, sadly. That's why I'm ranking it as C for F2P friendly. I'm sorry. For Phantom Hunt, I'm rating the Rune Knight as A, since in terms of DPS, you deal a lot of damage to the bosses. But unless you have two choices here. If you want to deal more damage to the bosses, you need spear build. It's really hard, in my opinion. It's really hard to use spear build on killing the enemies. But if you want to kill more players, then the sword build will be better. So it's kind of, depending on your role. That's why I'm only giving it A. It's not the best one, but it's still gonna, perform its role wherever you are. But you have to change, builds. Next would be the Guild League. For the Guild League main, it's gonna be rated as A also, since it's so good in terms of when you are using it on sword build. It's gonna kill a lot of people. But in terms of defensive capabilities, it's not that ranking a little bit higher, but it's a really good killing machine on the main field. It has a lot of movement speed, a high movement speed, which is really needed on the main battlefield. And at the same time, if you can kill, if you can slow, and if you can nullify the damage, the size of the enemies, particularly when the Dorams come, it's gonna be even better, because you don't care about sizes. And most of the times, you can see a lot in the previous global matches that we had. You can see a lot of Krakens using Rune Knights. They're still performing very good, even though sometimes they cannot kill that fast. Okay, in terms of the sub battlefield, I'm gonna rank it as A2, but this time it's gonna use the spear build. The spear build is really good right now that they're gonna release the first set of third jobs. But with the occurrence, or with the release of the Doram, this one is gonna get lower. The rating is gonna get lower. But considering that we still don't have Doram, in terms of melee damage, your best bet there is the Rune Knight. Okay. For War of Imperium, I love using Rune Knights before on War of Imperium because of the ease on use in terms of this, whether you're using spear build or sword build. I think sword build is still better for War of Imperium because of the range and the huge burst. I love it. So I'm still gonna rank it as S. It's still not, as good as some of the classes, but, having mobility is one of those good things on PvP. So since you have that automatically on a Rune Knight, then I'm gonna give it an S. For Dimension Drill, it's not that high on Dimension Drill because of the other job classes that you would want for Dimension Drill in order for you to take down the enemies. And in terms of small scale movements and small scale killing, if you want to burst down the enemies, you would want other job classes to burst it down instead of a Rune Knight. Still, having mobility is one of the good things of a Rune Knight. That's why it's not so bad on Dimension Drill. Okay, so Next would be the Warlock. Let's go and talk about the Warlock. So in terms of farming, the Warlock is the best one out there. I think the Ranger is the best one out there, but it can have an optimal, optimal farming capability with the level 115 Wisdom set. So once it gets released, it's gonna be unstoppable for the Warlock in terms of farming because of the gravitational field. It's it's gonna be the best one out there, and I have nothing else to say. I really love farming with the Warlock. Okay, that's why I rank it as S. Even with the normal Fire Wind skill or the Fire Wind build, it's still gonna be a really good one. In terms of Fire Wind build, I can rate it an A, but for the gravitational field, it is S. Okay. In terms of MVP, as compared with the Rune Knight, it's not gonna be performing as high as the Rune Knight, but still very good because you can nullify the element. This time is the element is nullifying, the job class is nullifying in the enemy. You can have a chance. You have a 2 times of 15% chance, mutually exclusive chances for you to have additional damage on the enemy. That's 100% additional damage, but it's not 100% chance. That's why most in long fights, a lot of other job classes are gonna out DPS the Warlock. Okay, that's why you need a lot of magic damage, magical attack for the Warlock in order for you to to get on par with other job classes such as Rune Knight. That's why I'm rating it as B. I'm not saying it's bad. It's still gonna be so good, particularly on water enemies. But that's it on water enemies. If once you have you have come across fire enemies or wind enemies, it's still okay. But for fire enemies or other other enemies such as wherein you could get a more consistent increase in damage because of the element, the Warlock also has that, but only a chance. So that's why I'm rating it as B. Next is for Nightmare Temple. Nightmare Temple, it's still a good DPS for Nightmare Temple. It's just that in terms of bursting down the enemy, sometimes the Rune Knight gets the job done faster. Okay, for Juperos, it's gonna be good, it's gonna be better because of the mob control, and you still can deal pretty much high damage on the boss and give your party a little bit high points, but not as high as the Rune Knights. Okay, for time space anomaly, it's a mid damager. It's not the best one for the time space anomaly. You will always see there are two players wherein the Warlock has a higher DP or higher stats than the Rune Knight, but the Rune Knight will still perform better on TSA. On PvP factor or contents, is it F2P friendly? Well, I'm gonna say that if it depends on your build. So the Warlock has 2 builds. Okay, the Warlock has 2 builds. The first build is the Fire Wind build. The second one is the Ice Earth build. So it depends on your spending capability on which one to go in terms of PvP. If you are a low spender or an F2P, of course, you're now going to be a utility role and a disabler role, and Warlock does so good in terms of disabling the enemy. That's why it's really wanted even if you are F2P. So that's the reason why I'm ranking it A in terms of F2P, being F2P friendly, because no matter your spending capability, you will still have a spot or a role in PvP contents. Okay, so in terms of Phantom Hunt, that's really good. Okay, Warlocks are really good because they can deal so much damage on the boss at the same time. They can deal with players. That's how good the Warlock is. With just one build, you can deal damage, and you can deal damage to the boss. You can also deal damage or kill enemies because of your ignore magic defense. The Warlock has a very high ignore magic defense. That's why it's just so good. Sometimes we are failing to see a way to counter the Warlocks, because you can still get one hit even for a mid-spender Warlock because of the ignore magic defense it has. Okay, so that will be the same for the Guild League main and also on the Guild League sub. Really, really good. Also, I think also on War of Imperium, it's just because of the ignore magic defense, it's undefeated. Okay, and also with Dimension Drill. Okay, so next, let's go to the Archbishop. For the Archbishop, in terms of farming, this is not a good start for the Archbishop. You're still gonna rely on Magnus. It has some of the DPS attached to it, DPS 3 on its skill attached to it, but it's not as good as the DPS of every other third jobs, because technically the Archbishop is there to support. So it just has normal damaging skills, AoE skills, but not as spammable as the other jobs. That's why I'm rating it as tier B. In terms of MVPs, of course, you would need Archbishop. So good for if you have an Archbishop. You just have to determine, if you are the Archbishop, you just have to determine which one will be dealing the highest DPS, and then you'll be bonding your stats to them, and you'll be sharing magical attack and physical attack to them, your magical attack and physical attack to them, and increasing also their damage. That's how good the Archbishop is, and that's the one of the biggest reasons why they are needed on almost all of the contents except farming. Okay. So that's why your S on MVP, your S on Nightmare Temple, you're also S in Juperos. But in terms of TSA, that's where you fall behind. Most of the you will never see an Archbishop deal so high damage or so high ranking on the TSA ranks, except if you are the top 1 Kraken in your server. But in terms of comparison with the same DP on other job classes, then you'll be the worst one. You're D tier on TSA. In terms of F2P friendly, this is the easiest, okay? Easiest to build in terms of spending capability. I've seen a lot of F2Ps that are really good Archbishop, very tanky, very good in movement, because sometimes the thing that you want in Archbishop is the timing, the micromanaging of your skills, and the rest would be depending on your defense, magic defense, and damage reductions. So that alone makes it F2P friendly. I'll rate it as tier S, okay? For Phantom Hunt, of course, you're needed there. Guild League, you're needed there. Guild League Subfield, of course, you're more needed there because of your Epiclesis. War of Imperium, also needed there. And Dimension Drill, there's a big difference on having an Archbishop on random rankings, random battles, random partying, than not having an Archbishop. There's a really huge difference, so you're also needed there. Okay, it's also better to have, at least 2 Archbishop on your team on Dimension Drill if ever you'll be, fighting for the Thor's Cup. Okay, let's now go to the Guillotine Crosses. Okay, the Guillotine Cross in terms of farming is, how can I say this? It's good on small scale or small ranges wherein the enemies are kind of, close to each other. But by the time that they release other maps wherein the clump of the enemies are very far from each other, that's where you fall apart. You can still, you're just gonna farm on one spot. That's one of the downsides of the Guillotine Cross. That's why I'm rating it also as B. Next, for MVP, you can have a lot of DPS on the MVP. One thing's lacking here always is the presence of a mechanic. It is really needed. If you want to deal more damage to the MVP, you need a mechanic. But once you have obtained a mechanic, that's the real deal. That's the real deal. That's when your damage goes through the roof. That's why I love it. So, but that's the thing. That's the reason why I rank it as tier A, is because if you don't have a mechanic, your damage, it decreases by 25%, so for large enemies. So that's one of the bad sides. And also versus the, if you're using the poison build or the dual dagger build, you'll be performing you're gonna be performing lower than other job classes in terms of DPS versus undeads and shadow elements. But if you're using Qatar, that won't be a problem. Okay. For Nightmare Temple, they are also one of those jobs that can take down the boss by as fast as you can imagine, but they have a lot of preparation, including the mechanics. Okay, for the Juperos, they also can deal so high damage here. The reason why I ranked it as B tier is because of the range. By the time that you need to kill a lot of enemies on the field, you need to get closer to them, and that loses a lot of time in terms of your countdown on the Juperos. That's why I rated it as B, because of the slow kills on the mobs. But then again, in terms of DPS, it's gonna be one of your highest contributing points on your rank Juperos. Okay, next would be time space anomaly. It's also good. It's just that sometimes you won't be having that better. I would say that the DPS of the Guillotine Cross is better than the Rune Knight, but you cannot take a mechanic along with you inside the time space anomaly. That's why I would rate them both the same. Okay, next would be the mechanic. Oh, no. Let's now go to PvP. Is it F2P friendly? In my opinion, it's not. The only reason for you to play on PvP is to kill enemies, to kill backlines, to be mobile, to be the first one on the mob side, or to catch out the points of the enemies in terms of dimension drill. But considering that you are kind of melee in a way, you have to be on somehow on melee range, you also have to be tanky. And considering that both of the builds of the Guillotine Cross doesn't have a shield, you have to invest more on your damage reduction, physical defense, and defense. That's why only the high spenders can pull off a proper Guillotine Cross. I've never seen an F2P Guillotine Cross on global. That's why it's C tier on my F2P friendly contents. Okay, so Phantom Hunt, I'm gonna rate it as B. It's mobile. It's good on damaging the bosses. It can also kill enemies, but not as fast as the Warlock can dish out damage. That's why, regardless of the build, the Guillotine Cross is using, most of the time that I am encountering a Guillotine Cross, particularly if it is a Kraken, I can really, I can just, sometimes I can get away from it, as compared with a Warlock. If you get damaged by a Warlock, it's over for you, because they also have teleport, and they can ignore your magic defense. The Guillotine Cross, sometimes you won't be having that specific burst skill up whenever you need it. So I'm not ranking it as high as in terms of Phantom Hunt, but in Guild League it has specific niche uses. Okay, on Guild League main, that's the reason why I'm ranking it as A, because in terms of the main battlefield, it's really important for you to have 1, 2, or 3 Guillotine Crosses in the whole elite, because those Guillotine Crosses are the ones that should be picking out the backline of the enemy. They should be the ones that are stationed at the mobs spawn area. And if your Guillotine Cross does a very good job on that, it can really make or break the game. Okay, in terms of the subfield, although the subfield is not that Guillotine Cross friendly as compared with the main battlefield, it still has good good some of the good roles for the sub-battlefield wherein you are stationed on the outlier spawn areas of the mobs. But in terms of clashes, it will be kind of hard for you to perform your role as a backliner or a backstabber on that part. So I'm giving it at B tier there. In terms of WoW, it has mobility. It can kill, moving enemies. So as compared with the Phantom Hunt, wherein the map is so much wider than the War of Imperium maps, I'm gonna give it a higher rating than the Phantom Hunt, but a lower one compared to the ranged DPS users. Okay, in terms of Dimension Drill, there are niche cases wherein you would want a Guillotine Cross, particularly if there's a cart to be moved, because the cart can be moved even though you are hidden. So while your party members are battling clashes over there, you have the choice, or you have the option to push the cart by yourself. And that is one thing that usually is working on that part of the Dimension Drill map. So it has a niche case, okay, in terms of niche cases wherein the Guillotine Cross would be useful. Okay, let's now go to the mechanics. For the mechanics in terms of farming, it's really good. It's the same. I know most people would be hating me for this, but the mechanics, they would say that it is better than Rune Knight. I'm gonna say also that's the case, but only slight better. Only slight better, since the other jobs has obtained a lot of buffs as compared with the mechanics. In terms of the mechanics, in terms of buffs, the mechanics has been an outlier. But then again, it's still gonna be one of those job classes that you would want in terms of farming as a party member. Okay, they can really wipe out mobs as fast as you can. And if you're gonna compete on one spot, you're not gonna win versus a mechanic. But then again, you would probably win if you are you can still probably kill a lot of enemies if you are using a Warlock gravitational field, or if you are a ranger. Okay, more on that later. Let's focus about the mechanic. The mechanic also does a lot of good DPS on the MVP, not as high as the Rune Knight, but the mechanic also gives out buffs to the Guillotine Cross and the Ranger. That's why, but the downside of the mechanic is when it fights fire enemies, because its burst continuous damage is fire, so it will probably most of the times, and I'm sure of it, put out less DPS versus fire damage dealers or fire elements on the bosses. That's why I'm not gonna put it S. It can be an S on particularly on earth types, but on versus fire, it would be hard for the mechanics to deal damage. Okay, that's why I'm putting it as a tier. For the Nightmare Temple, it's a good damage dealer, also good burst, but it's melee. So most of the times, it would be better for the player to become ranged on Nightmare Temple, but you can deal a lot of damage. That's why it's still B tier on Nightmare Temple. Juperos, it also has a good damage there. Also can reach mobs because of the other skills that it has. So it's still an A tier there, aside from the buffs that it gives to the Guillotine Cross or the Ranger. Now, for TSA, you will always see one of the top damage dealers out there to be a mechanic because of the burst, the short burst skill that it does. And there's also no fire element bosses on TSA. That's why it's still it has now an S tier as compared with the MVP here. So it now has an S tier there. Is it F2P friendly? In my opinion, it's not that F2P friendly, but same as the Warlock, it has some uses if you are an F2P mechanic. You will always be needed on some cases. That's why mechanic is still tier A, because you have a support role. And on PvP, you now become a tank role. Being a tank as a mechanic is one of the helpful things that we had seen in the previous Odin Cup Season 2 on a global, wherein the mechanics are the ones that are rushing towards the enemy in terms of clashes, because they are the ones that are capable of paralyzing the backline. They are the ones that are capable of withstanding damage, and they have a lot of damage reductions built on their Madogear kit. That's why I'm gonna put it on F2P. Tier A, very good on F2P because you have a lot of options, whatever your spending capability is. Okay? Phantom Hunt mechanics, same. It's a tank, and in terms of damage, it has some, but you have to choose. You have to choose. If you want to deal damage to bosses, you won't be having much kills because you're a melee damager. So that's why I'm putting it on B. Okay, you have to choose there. Now, for the Guild League main, being a tank there is really, really needed, but you won't be needing that much tanks in the main. That's why I'm rating it as B. And for the subfield, still a tank. The paralyze is really, really, really useful. But then again, after that, I don't know if you're gonna be, proving that much of a value in terms of DPS. For War of Imperium, same rank because you're a tank. And sometimes if you're searching for a tank, a Kraken and a whale will be tankier than you. And on Dimension Drill, same buffer and a tank. It's still needed, but you can do without a mechanic. Next, Ranger. Okay, the last job in our list. Oh my god, it's already almost 1 hour. Okay, Ranger. For the Ranger, in terms of farming, it's the best one. Hands down, the best one. Okay? In terms of range, ever since they made the basic skill of the Ranger third job to be depending on your attack speed, it has been even better. That's why I'm ranking it as S. If I can rank SS, this is the SS here on this stage, on this content. For MVP, it has been better, but a lot of you would probably want to become a Rune Knight instead. That's it. Okay. Now, in terms of Nightmare Temple, it can dish out damage because it's neutral. It can, but you have to be melee on that part. You can be flexible there. You can use your range. That's why I'm putting an A here because, the DPS here is easy. It's just whether you can take down the boss as fast as you can. And as compared with the Warlock can pretty much damage the boss higher than the Ranger, but the range of the Ranger makes it easier for you to complete the stage. Now, in terms of Juperos, the Ranger has it all. It's not bad. It's also not good. And on TSA, you can actually, dish high damage, but you would still prefer other jobs than a Ranger. Okay? The bad side of the Ranger is that you don't have any other role. You cannot have a tank role, obviously. You cannot have a support role. You cannot become a, on most cases, the best that you would become on PvP is a disabler. And your disable is not as good, even not as good as the mechanics disable. The only edge you have as a Ranger on PvP is the range, the higher range. Aside from that, that's it. But if you're a DPS and you cannot kill, then better yet, get other ranged DPS fighters or classes. So, yep, in terms of F2P, a lot of people have already tried becoming a Ranger as a Kraken, and they really have done very good. They have really done very good on Guild League main. But then again, aside from that, you can also deal more damage, or you can perform better if you were other job classes. That's the only thing about it. Okay, so that's B. Now, in terms of Phantom Hunt, also because of range, you have much more flexibility there. But once you get in range of the enemy, then you're dead. Next would be Guild League main. As I've told you guys, as a disabler. As a disabler, you have one good purpose on PvP, and that is the good thing about the Guild League main is the importance of disabling the enemy, stunning them, immobilizing them. That is one of those make or breaks roles that you can have in your elite team. That's why sometimes you need a ranger in Guild League main. Then for subfield, it's okay. You know, I've seen a lot of high spenders that are trying to kill me, and they fail. They just immobilize, and I can easily run, and I can just go there and be on my range and just kill them. So I'm just rating it as B. It's still okay. It's still okay. It has its uses, but not that dominant. Okay, in terms of numbers, not that dominant in PvP scenarios. Then in terms of War of Imperium, it has range, so it is really good on defending. Okay, it's really good on the defense team. That's why I'm rating it as A. In terms of offense, you just have to know your place. Okay, you just have to know where to position your character at. Okay, in Dimension Drill, this is I can't rate it as C, since I've seen rangers that are really contributing that much on the team fights because of the immobilizing Nexus engine skill. Aside from that, they're not killing that much. But then again, that's their role, disabler. So if you're gonna be a disabler, I would be better off with a mechanic, in my opinion. Okay? So that is for all of this. We're now gonna reveal all of this because we have already talked about it. And now we're going to, what do you call this one? We're going to look at the overall score. We have computed this overall score with 5 points to S, 4 points to A, 3 points to B, 2 points to C, and 1 point to D. So when we add all of those, the Rune Knight will be on overall rating of 46 out of 55 points. Perfect 55 points. We have 46 points on Rune Knights. The next one would be Warlock, 48 points. Archbishop, 49 points, the highest one. Guillotine Cross and Mechanic, these are both 39 points. And the last one would be the Ranger. If this was the old patch or the first ever patch, the Ranger would be lower, so much lower. But because of the buffs, it has already become higher. This is already buffed. So we have the top one to be the Archbishop. The next one is the Warlock. The next one would be the Rune Knight. Both on Guillotine Cross, same points on Guillotine Cross and Mechanic. And then on Ranger would be the last one. Alright, so that's it. Whew. The longest so far. Thank you everybody for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. If you happen to like this video, please do leave a like, share this to your friends, and click that bell notification button so you get notified every time I upload a new video, start a new stream, or a new content. That's it. See you again on the next video. Bye-bye!